I think there's a more meta question here, right? Which is that like what these LLMs are doing.
So what they're doing is basically they build an AI e-commerce store builder.
If the product is free, it's because you are the product.
Hello and welcome to the Generation AI podcast, episode 14, where every week we discuss AI, data, machine learning, and we bridge the gap between what it means for business and what it takes on the tech side to achieve this kind of all the AI things we're seeing nowadays. Callum, how do you feel about this?
Well, I mean, I'm mainly impressed by the fact that every week you manage to remember what episode we're on, because it's 14 episodes down already, many more to go, and yeah, looking forward to another edition of the Generation AI podcast.
Sounds good. We do have three topics today, ranging different types of news. So first, we're going to talk about Shopify. You know probably about Shopify, the e-commerce giant. They just introduced AI to help you essentially go from ideas to an e-commerce store without having to drag and drop and build it yourself. Second, we'll talk about how big companies are hungry for data, essentially. So Meta is planning to train their AI on data from users in the European Union. It seems they're trying to bypass some of the data protection laws. We'll talk about that. And lastly, we'll talk about hiring and the bubble around AI top talent. And we'll talk about how the wave of will replace people with AI is kind of over. Now big companies are rehiring their top AI talent to build the next generation of AI tools. Let's go ahead with the first topic. So Shopify, what do you know of it, Colin?
Shopify, probably the world's leading e-commerce technology company. I mean, it's a crazy statistic. I think something like 30% of e-commerce stores globally run on Shopify. So even though if you're an end user, you may not see Shopify, there's a 99% chance that you've bought various items of clothing or goods of any kind. If you're buying them online, you're either buying them through Amazon or through a vendor that uses Shopify as their back-end store. So particularly interesting to see what they're doing with their AI strategy, because ultimately, I think what happens in e-commerce from an AI perspective is largely going to be defined either by Amazon or by Shopify.
I agree with you. And yeah, just to reiterate, Shopify is this kind of drag and drop platform that helps you, the normal user, build your e-commerce store regardless of what you're trying to sell online. So even if you have your own product, if you're doing drop shipping or any other form of e-commerce, Shopify is there to help you with all the tools needed, from SEO to CRMs, product management, inventory management, and so on. So what they're building is they're leveraging AI in an area where I think it makes a lot of sense to leverage AI. So they have the perfect scenario to build AI tools. They do have a lot of users. They do have a ton of traction. They have a lot of data, metrics, and analytics on how people use their system, both as a client of an e-commerce store and also as a client of Shopify to build their e-commerce stores. So what they're doing is basically they build an AI e-commerce store builder that lets you specify what you want to sell, what you want to build, what you want your e-commerce store to look like, and they will create this store end to end for you. There's no need to drag and drop components or set it up manually. I'm just curious, what's your take on whether this might make people lose their jobs or whether this will create so many e-commerce stores just because it's so easy right now as a person to create a store online and sell your products?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have a slightly different way of looking at this, which is kind of that I think particularly for visionary founders, so Tobias Lutke, Toby Lutke runs Shopify, and he's obviously the founder or one of the co-founders. And he was one of the CEOs famously to come out with a quote recently that said something to the effect of, the next time you want to make a hire, you need to justify why we can't hire AI rather than a human to do this job. Now, obviously, that's quite a hyperbolic thing to say, right? And I think you and I both know that AI technology isn't there yet to replace all Shopify employees. But I think visionary founders tend to have one thing in common, which is that they try to front run innovators' dilemma. So the CEO of Klarna, again, the founder of Klarna, recently came out and said, we're hiring AI only for our customer service from now on. And then a few months later, I think a couple of weeks ago, he came out and said, okay, we overdid this. We're hiring humans again for customer support. And I think basically these tech companies, whether you're a buy now, pay later tech platform or an e-commerce technology company like Shopify, I think they basically see AI as an existential threat to the modern tech stack, to these SaaS-based companies that are essentially just like databases with a nice front end and some business logic built on top of it. I think they are genuinely scared that, you know, an AI-first platform is going to take over Shopify's business. And I don't know whether he's right yet. I don't know whether the future, what the future looks like in this regard, whether the future of AI is these SaaS companies just moving into AI, or whether they'll ultimately be replaced by AI-first vendors. I have no idea, but certainly I think these sorts of actions from the likes of Toby at Shopify are a reflection of a founder that doesn't want to be a victim of the AI revolution.
And do you think founders that are following this trend of let's build AI as soon as possible and let's automate as much as possible with AI are rushing too much and are making mistakes when it comes to firing people and hiring AI?
But I think it's just maybe, but it almost doesn't matter because it's just a hedge, right? Like if the future of kind of business applications is SaaS or SaaS plus AI, they're going to be absolutely fine, right? And yes, they may have wasted $2 or $3 billion building out the AI first tech stack. But if your business is worth 100 billion and there's a 10% chance that AI first is the way forward, then wasting $3 billion is a good idea if you're going to protect against that downside risk.
So you're saying it's a good gamble
it's a gamble they have to make because the cost of doing so relative to their valuations is so low, and the cost to their business if they don't is potentially so high, even though the probability is low.
I agree. And back to the Shopify topic, do you think this will enable small businesses to sell more on a global scale, just because people don't need to know tech to build an e-commerce platform right now? They can just use this free speech AI to build everything for them.
Maybe. I mean, I think, you know, I'd be interested to get your perspective as a builder, right? I mean, these drag and drop tools are kind of ubiquitous, whether it's e-commerce with Shopify or WordPress for websites. You know, there's tons of these different tools for non-technical people. But what's your perspective on how this could impact e-commerce specifically with respect to AI?
Let me first comment on how I think AI will impact these drag and drop tools, and then I'll answer the e-commerce specific question. The thing with those drag and drop tools, regardless of industry, so e-commerce, website builders, and ads, this kind of things, they have very well-defined rules for using the platform. So you can only drag a specific component into a specific place, or you only have this 100 components with this 5 settings each. It's a very constrained problem space. And because it's very constrained, it can be very well documented. And if it can be very well documented, it serves as a very good foundation for building with AI. because then you have like very well documented context, you know the rules, you know basically all the action paths that the AI can take. And from that point on, just translating from intent, even if it's text or voice, to the sequence of actions and rules to follow is quite straightforward. So the more your system is well documented and well defined, you can easily apply AI to automate what people used to do manually through drag and drop. So I think it's a perfect boilerplate for using this kind of automations. To answer the second question on Shopify, I do think this intent to e-commerce store will enable more people to build small companies and sell their products at a global scale, just because they don't have to be concerned about how do we build e-commerce store, how do we handle SEO, how do we do content, how we do a CRM, how do we do all these things, payments and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. If it's automated and is just a plug and play tool for building for selling your product worldwide, I think people will see adoption of these kind of tools.
Yeah, I mean the massive advantage that the likes of Shopify have is they have a massive distribution advantage, right? If you're an e-commerce AI company today, like you're having to get that first, that second, that 10th customer, you're having to build out a sales team, you're having to do the marketing, etc., etc. If you're Shopify, you have like over 100,000 customers and a 2,000 person strong sales team and 2,000 leads a month coming into your business. And so, you know, it's theirs to lose, really, in many ways, because they already have the users. They just need to convert them to AI solutions.
And having such a big scale can also allow them to A/B test on whether people like AI or don't like AI, or different flavors of AI. And as you said, if people churn because of AI, they can afford that because they have a massive user base. But maybe let's move on to the second topic. I titled this as "Hungry for Data," so maybe this will make a good podcast title. We kept talking on previous episodes how data is becoming the next generation, the next differentiator in the AI race. So we have hardware; it's now being commoditized. We do have a strong hardware foundation. Now we have foundational models that start to become more and more commoditized. You do have open source models and so on. And I do believe that data is the next big differentiator when it comes to the AI race. Specifically for this topic, there was an announcement a few days ago about Meta planning to train their AI models on user data from Europe across Facebook and Instagram. And this can mean visual data, images and videos, comments, I guess, interactions between users, shares, and these kind of things. The main red flag here is that within Europe, we do have GDPR and some stronger data protection laws compared to the US. So in the US, people don't have much to object about because there's no law to stop Meta from training AI on users' data. In Europe, though, we do have laws, but it seems that they just found a loophole around the GDPR law. So what they're saying is that if your profile is private, which might be true, might not be true, we can't train on your data. But if your profile is public, and many companies and many people have their profiles both on Instagram and Facebook public, we will train on your data unless you opt out by the 27th of May. And for context, we're recording this on the 28th of May. And it turns out that if you haven't opted out by technically yesterday, Meta will start training their AI on your data. I'm not sure if you call them use Facebook or Instagram, but put yourself in the shoes of an Instagram or Facebook user. How do you feel about having AIs trained on your likeness, on your posts, on your, let's say, creativity?
I think there's an old maxim that everybody's got to remember at times like this, and it says, if the product is free, it's because you are the product.
And Instagram has been free for a while.
Instagram's been free for a while. Facebook, to the best of my knowledge, has always been free. Facebook are in the business of monetizing our data. This is just another way that they are seeking to monetize our data. So this is just a standard chapter out of the Meta playbook with an AI title. But the playbook's the same. They've always operated this way. They will continue to operate this way. The one thing I would push back on is on the stack itself. It seems that actually LLMs are getting commoditized way faster than the hardware that they're on top of. I think Nvidia's earnings reports are due out today or tomorrow, and they continue to blow it out of the water, and they continue to be the only game in town. I think it's the H100s, if I'm not mistaken, that are the main chips they use, right? And then they're coming out with
they have H200s and H300s, if I'm not mistaken. But H100 is a good reference point.
Yeah, and then they've obviously got the Blackwell chip, so they've got a huge lead in this area, and it doesn't seem to be closing as fast as market participants were thinking or assuming that it would. But no, I agree with you. In general, the entire stack is becoming commoditized, as it should be, right? Because ultimately, what is valuable is what people build on top of the stack. That's where value should be accrued. And if people are just kind of monetizing all of these elements of the stack, then it's extractive, and it's, ultimately enough competition will come in any area of the stack to commoditize any element. Or at least that's what the economic textbooks would teach you. But in answer to your question, I mean, I think data will remain the moat that Facebook builds its products around. But that said, I think that just speaks to a problem with the internet more generally, whereby these companies are allowed to take what was meant to be this open protocol that gave anybody access to information anywhere and essentially turn it into this closed system in which they control all things and all people and all data. I think eventually there'll be a pushback against that. There'll be a movement towards, data sovereignty of the individual, but it seems like we're a long way from that right now.
I agree. And to come back to what you said earlier, I think we should get used to the fact that, as you said, if it's free, you're the product. And I think generally people should be more educated around this short saying, right? Because it's very true. And once you accept this and you create public content, you should assume someone will use it to train private models that will be later monetized. What I'm more keen to understand here is, okay, if it's free, you're the product, but does this open up a niche of new startups that are building privacy first at a higher cost? So will this open up the need for social networks, for data platforms that come at a premium, but guarantee privacy?
Maybe. But let me open it. Hopefully we don't turn this into a 40-minute podcast, but I think there's a more meta question here, right? Which is that, like, what these LLMs are doing is effectively breaking the business model of the internet. The business model of the internet for the last 30 years has been that, people consume online digital content that they find valuable to them, and somebody has to create that content. And the people that create the content are the people that benefit from people viewing their content, because if enough people view their content, whether it's a blog or a video or a website, if enough people view their content, then eventually that will trickle down into interest in their business and their products and their services. So businesses create content for free so that people will consume them, so that the internet has content and business has leads and customers. We give you free content, you give us marketing. That business model is being fundamentally broken by large language models. And there is currently no economic incentive for companies to create content and to create data effectively. So right now, the LLMs are harvesting all of the data that exists today, but removing the incentive for companies to create any new data, because all of the search queries will just be answered by an LLM rather than the company's website. So there's some fundamental issues that need to be worked out, and obviously plagiarism and where you get your data from and what your LLM is trained on is fundamental to that. But I think there's a much bigger question to answer here.
Right. Last question on this topic.
But what's your perspective on that? How do you think, given the rise of large language models, and sorry to put you on the spot here, but how do you think the business model of the internet will play out, given this context?
I mean, it's not uncommon that people don't optimize for SEO anymore. I mean, they do optimize for SEO, but at the same time, they're increasingly optimizing for, let me see if I get this right, GEO, generative engine optimization, or something like this. So they're basically optimizing for whenever the language model reads their content and learns something from it, they're optimizing for that model remembering the content when someone asks a question at some point in the future.
But here's the massive problem. Under the old model, under the Blue Links model, Google would surface that content to you, and then you would go to the website. Whereas now, ChatGPT may reference that the content came from my website, and it may link to the website. But if I've already got the information I need from ChatGPT, I'm not necessarily going to go to the website.
And it's hard to measure how many references and how much information was derived from your website, because those models are just summarizers of information. They aggregate stuff from various sources, even though they reference the sources. It's hard to say how much value a user got from that specific source, let alone conversion rates or click-through rates or buying rates from a website. I think this concept will go away once all the information is served by a method, a model that just summarizes things and aggregates knowledge.
Very, very briefly, because I know we need to move on, but I think there's a question about what marketers do today, given all of that context, right? And I think it's very, very simple. If you're creating content today, I think you need to optimize your content funnel for bottom of the funnel. I think you need to assume that all of the kind of top of funnel and mid funnel research is all going to happen in LLMs, or 80% of it is going to happen in LLMs. And ultimately, the only time customers are going to come to a website is when they've decided what service they want and who they want. And they're still going to need to come to the website to access that service. So I think
in the language of normal people, what does bottom of the funnel mean?
Okay, so like you got a few phases of the funnel, right? So top of funnel is like awareness. You broadly have a problem you want to solve, but you don't know what the solution is yet. You don't really understand the problem you're solving for yet. But you've got a tacit awareness. And then as you move down the buying funnel, you begin to inform yourself about what your problem is, what solution you need, why you need it, and what solutions are potentially out there. And when you're at the bottom of the funnel, you know exactly the problem you have, you know exactly the solution you need, and maybe you're now ready to speak to a salesperson, so there's that famous statistic that the first time a customer speaks to a salesperson, they're already 70% of the way through the buying process, or 70% of the way through the funnel. So I think we have to assume that top of funnel, that awareness stage, that research stage, and mid funnel, it all happens inside a large language model now. There's no clicking on blue links. The only time you're going to click on a blue link or even go to a link to a website from ChatGPT is when you're ready to buy the service or engage with a human being to talk about that service more.
So just to wrap up this point, what you're saying is that the job of a marketer today in the, let's say, LLM knowledge-driven world the job of a successful marketer is to create highly specific content for very niche situations or clients or use cases.
You should, instead of making the content that informs the problem that the customer has and the potential solutions they would need, it needs to be the very bottom of the funnel content that is most relevant to allowing the customer to actually make the decision. Instead of thinking about what's the very first thing they need to know in the buyer journey, you need to think about what is the very last thing they will need to know.
Understood.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Let's move on to the last topic.
We took a sidetrack there, but I thought it was relevant.
Yeah, I think it was good. Last topic is we keep coming back to pretty much the same verticals on this podcast. And one of the verticals is the overhype around AI agents and how, let's say, uninformed decision makers fire people thinking that this AI wave will replace all their employees at a fraction of the cost. This AI will work 24/7, will never get tired, will never take breaks, will never quit. It turns out that for some industries, people can be replaced, at least fractionally, by AI. But in some other industries, specifically talking about tech talent and the people who build AI, it's not that easy to replace talented engineers with the tools that they should be employed to build, basically. So specifically here, there was a post from Reuters, I think, we'll link it in the show notes, a few days ago, how the top 1% companies, and we're talking here about OpenAI, about Safe Superintelligence, about Thinking Machines, all these hot startups that are building the next big thing or are planning to build the next big thing in AI, are hiring ML talent more than ever and are hiring them at maybe 10x market rates just because they need to retain top researchers, top ML engineers, and people who actually know how to build AI, how to scale AI, and how to think in terms of the next 10, 20 years in AI innovation. So I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on this hype of let's fire people because we have this amazing AI that will just do the job of people.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose as an engineer, I'd actually be more curious to hear your thoughts to kick off with. So, like, what's your personal experience with this? How do you think this is going to evolve over time?
Sure. So to reiterate on what I kept saying on previous episodes is if you're a single skilled engineer, let's say you only know how to code JavaScript, or you only know how to do Python, or you only know one specific thing, there's a high chance some of your work might be automated or highly optimized by coding agents because it's super specific. But once you have a mix of different skills, once you know how to code, how to manage, how to speak properly and to communicate properly, how to manage people, lead teams, understand non-technical requirements, translate them into tech requirements, and so on. The list is very long. Once you have this very unique mix of skills, it's going to be very hard for let's call it agentic system, however you want to call it. It's going to be very hard for this kind of system to replace you. Because it's a mix of skills, it requires human creativity, it requires critical thinking, it requires autonomy, and AI is not there yet. AI is very good, let's say, at building a React page in TypeScript. I'm getting very technical here. It's very good at following patterns and helping you build something based on a pattern. But it's not very good at finding niche problems, finding niche bugs, understanding complex systems, and basically linking multiple streams of information and reasoning based on them. We're not there yet. So I would say if you're a multi-skill engineer, it's going to be very hard to be replaced. And even more than that, if you're the person who's supposed to build, I'll just throw a bold statement. If you're the person who's supposed to build AGI, I think it's quite stupid for your manager to say, yeah, let's just drop this person and let's hire 10 AI agents to replace him. because you're the person who's supposed to build this AI that will, in 50 years from now, maybe replace people completely. That's my take from an engineering point of view. We're not there yet. Some skills can be automated. Some skills can be replaced. More complex skills can't.
Yeah, I think in general I think it's about when you're hiring for engineers. I think one thing we should say OpenAI hiring top AI talent. OpenAI is the top 0.0001% of companies, right? So they truly need the world's best talent. Most companies do not need the world's best talent. Most companies are not AI companies. And so I think it's really important that you get the right level of skill for the right role. You don't want to kind of overhire in the sense that you're, hiring the world's best people for kind of an average product or an average company. But neither do you want to underhire where you're trying to find, where you're building something complex, but ultimately trying to get the lowest cost engineers possible and thinking that that's not going to have an impact on your product. I think the distribution of talent in AI engineering specifically is severe, it seems, in the sense that, it's Pareto's law on steroids, I would imagine, in the sense that the top 10% of engineers are delivering the vast majority of the productivity in terms of innovation. From an innovation perspective, in terms of breaking new ground, doing new things, that probably represents less than 5% of ML engineers. Most ML engineers, I would imagine, greater than 50% have like 3 or 4 years experience with Python, and they can do most of the basic tasks very well. A few complex tasks, okay. But this kind of full stack AI engineer, I'm not really sure if they exist. And if they do exist, they're probably not working for a seed round startup, right? So yeah, I think the talent in the AI space is heavily skewed towards the companies that have the budget to pay for those talents. And it's just about working out, okay, when do I need a highly skilled engineer? And when do I actually just need an okay engineer?
I do agree with you. And I think this top talent term is severely overused. I see it all the time on LinkedIn, people wanting to hire top talent to the point that top talent doesn't mean much because people want top talent for average or below average rates. And I think employers and recruiters and all the people who are looking for top talent have to realize that true top talent is probably getting paid maybe millions in the top performing companies like OpenAI, Safe Superintelligence, and the like of those companies. So they have to be aware that top talent probably a top talent probably has access to top compensation. So they have to manage their expectations when they ask, yeah, we want to hire top talent, but yeah, here's the average rate for your location. I don't think it works this way. And to your point, I don't think all the companies need top talent. I think companies are doing well with talent in the, let's say, 90% percentile, and they're building amazing products.
I also think as well, if you're trying to optimize cost versus outcome, maybe you only need top talent 10% of the time or 20% of the time, where the top talent is the individuals designing the work and designing what the product delivery looks like. And then the okay talent is the one that's actually responsible for delivering it. And then you can optimize costs without having to sacrifice the quality of outcomes for the project. I think it's making sure that you allocate talent correctly. That's the key.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think some people are visionaries, some people are just builders. And not everybody wants to be a visionary, because this also comes with, with great power comes great responsibility.
Great responsibility.
So it's the same thing here. If you want to, let's say, shoot for the top talent range and be there with the players that are building the future, you also need to bear the responsibility of this future not going great.
Absolutely. Nonetheless, the talent war will continue.
It will, and we'll be here to cover aspects of it in the future podcasts. And I think with this we can close episode 14. We'll see each other next week, same time. Thanks, Colin. Do you have any closing remarks?
No, just keep building. Cheers, guys. See you soon.